Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. We're your hosts, Sam and Emma Priestley.
Hello.
And today I wanted to talk about the race to the bottom and why you shouldn't compete on price. And I think I can say that as just a sweeping statement. I don't think I've ever done a business where I should have got in cheaper.
That's a pretty bold statement.
That is a pretty bold statement. Do you know what I mean by competing on price?
Does it mean that you're not just going to look at all your competitors and then price slightly lower than them?
Yeah, pretty much. It goes a little bit beyond that. That instead of just pricing yourself the same as your competitors or trying to beat them on price, you will probably want to actually price yourself a bit higher, especially as when you're starting off. You don't really know who your competitors should be. So the companies you're looking at probably aren't really your direct competitors at all. But that's all the sort of stuff we're going to cover today. And what I wanted to do is I've got 3 different types of businesses I want to talk about. Businesses that we've run ourselves, either of us. And then talk about the different things that come into play about why on each of them it's best not to compete on price. So first off, I want to talk about freelance marketing. Freelance marketing, or any sort of service or consultancy-based business. This is a business that Emma started. This was her first one when she left corporate life. She became a freelance marketer, selling her services on Upwork or Freelancer or other websites like that. Second business I want to talk about is Pipehouse Gin, which is our craft gin business, where we obviously have a product. We sell bottles of gin. But this is also true for any other kind of generic product-based business, such as my table tennis business, where we make table tennis bats, or any one of the hundreds of Amazon FBA businesses out there. With them, it's also important not to compete on price. And then finally, I want to talk about the coffee shop that I used to run, and similar strain, your supper clubs that you still do run. You're selling a product, but it's an immediate product in a physical location. So 3 very different types of businesses.
Sounds good.
So let's start off with freelance marketing. So for each one, I'm going to go through what I think are the 5 reasons why we shouldn't compete on price, and then explain each one. So for freelance marketing, I'm going to say you can't win the race to the bottom, that the price indicates the quality and the expectations that people get from it, that you'll probably want a bigger margin than you originally expected, that everything's going to be more expensive than you think, and finally that it's easier to reduce your price than to increase it.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, that was rapid, so it doesn't matter if that's all gone over your head. Just to give you an overline of what we're going to talk about. So freelance marketing. First off, I want to say you can't win the race to the bottom. And this was particularly clear with freelance marketing, where you're in this open marketplace with hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of other people all competing for the same customers. And really all you've got to show for it is your profile, which might have a picture of you, a little portfolio of what you've done before, some reviews, the previous work you've done before, and then the price that you're charging.
Yeah.
And so you were up against people from developing countries who were charging $5 an hour. You're up against people in developed countries and in similar areas to you who are charging anywhere from $25 to $50 an hour. And then also a few really expensive people who are charging anything from $50 to $500 an hour.
Yeah.
So starting off, you went straight for that higher bracket is where you priced yourself. Do you remember why you did that?
Well, because I'd had quite a lot of experience in marketing and I wanted to appear to have high value so that I could be doing consultancy work rather than the kind of nitty-gritty hundreds of hours of marketing admin. I wanted to do the advice side and the strategy side.
Yeah, which is what you ended up doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying price indicates quality, and they're not going to hire you for data entry when you're $75 an hour.
Exactly.
Whereas they might hire an expert marketer at $5 an hour for data entry.
Yeah.
Also, likewise, I think one of the reasons you did it was also that you realised that there were people out there who were willing to do it for cheaper than you were.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And that if you decided to compete with them on that price, you wouldn't win.
Yeah, and I didn't want to.
And if your client was looking for the cheapest person, they could go with someone who's not you.
Yeah, and that was fine by me.
It's a weird thing that often the best clients to have are the ones who aren't that price conscious. If you're only working with the people who are trying to get it for as cheap as possible, you're probably going to hit issues at some point. So we talked about that running the race to the bottom. We talked about price indicating quality, that when people are shopping, they only really see price, and that they're going to hire you for your strategy side and actually the overall consulting stuff rather than the cheap jobs. Let's talk about how things are going to be more expensive than you think. So freelance marketing is something where you don't think there really are any expenses. It's just you. So when pricing yourself, you're saying $75 an hour. It's quite easy to then compare that to what you would get paid in a normal job.
Yeah.
And say, well, I got paid, I don't know, £40 an hour then, or $40 an hour then. Well, maybe I should charge $45 an hour for my freelancing. Or maybe think the opposite. Maybe think I should charge a bit less because I don't have a big name company behind me.
Yeah. And thinking about the expenses, I didn't often have an office and I didn't really commute to work.
Yeah, you didn't have any of the expenses that you might associate with a business.
Yeah.
But what you did have was you had a huge expense of time spent finding clients.
Yes, the new business side was very time consuming.
Yeah. So what do you reckon, maybe half your time, maybe even more than that, was actually spent finding clients versus actually doing the work?
It's just scaled, like, I don't even know how long I was doing it for, a year and a half, a year? I don't know. To start with, the first 3 months, most of my time was spent on new business. Whereas if you look at the last 3 months, there was hardly any time on new business. So you had to invest the time up front to build your client base. And also I had repeat customers. So towards the end of the year and a half, I didn't have to do as much new business.
The other expense that you would have is stuff like bad clients who might not pay you.
Yeah.
Or clients who might say that you haven't delivered what they wanted to and then basically force you to work extra for free.
Yeah.
Or extra work around it, such as interviewing or having the post contract chat.
Yes.
All this kind of stuff you haven't really factored in that are actually expenses. Just because you're not paying for an office or paying for staff doesn't mean you don't have expenses as a freelancer, as a one-person business. The next one I want to talk about was you will want a bigger margin than you probably think. And that's, I think, true for this one. It's more true for some of the other ones we're going to talk about. But generally, when starting a business, people look at how much they're going to make a profit. So they might say, for this $75 an hour, you're going to be making $75 an hour. So then they do some quick maths and they say, oh, well, in a week, I'm going to work this number of hours. And then at the end of the year, well, I want to earn the equivalent of my old salary. So I want to earn whatever it is, $70,000 a year. Therefore, and they kind of work backwards. They say, this is how much I want to earn. Therefore, this is how much I should be charging. And we've already said your expenses are going to be bigger than you think they are. But also the number you're probably going to sell and the margin you make you can't really do that maths.
No, definitely not for freelancing. I mean, I had no idea how much business I was going to get in the first few months, let alone the first year. So I didn't even do those calculations because I wouldn't even know where to start. Yeah,
and exactly, you don't know how much business you're going to get. That's true for product business. That's true for freelancing.
To me, I always saw something was better than nothing, which isn't really a very positive outlook on a new business, but that's how I started.
And then finally, I want to say that it's easier to reduce your price than to increase it. So if people know you're charging a certain amount and then you up it, so let's say you have one client and then they come back for some repeat work, it's quite difficult then to tell them the price has gone up. And you can do it, but then they might say no.
Yeah, whereas I had a very full-on client for, 3-4 months where I had quite a few billable hours per day, and therefore I gave him a discount after the first month, because actually the work that I was doing was quite a lot of the admin stuff.
Yeah.
But he wanted me because of my expertise in his area of business. But because he was guaranteeing a certain number of hours a day, it meant that I was then happy to negotiate with him.
And he feels good because he's getting a deal.
Yes.
Which is the other thing. Some people just love to negotiate. And so by having that flexibility to reduce price if needed, you get to indicate the high quality that you're selling by having that high initial price, but then also still get customers who are then feeling good about it by having a reduced price. We'll talk about a bit more in our next business. So that's freelance marketing. Let's move on to Pipehouse Gin, our gin business. Let's hit all these 5 categories again. So first of all, the race to the bottom. Well, this should be obvious with a craft gin business. We're up against the biggest companies in the food and drink world.
Yep.
A lot of gin brands are owned by just a handful of companies, all of which are going to be able to produce gin much, much, much cheaper than we can.
And it's so much more scalable as well, the quantity they can produce.
They can do an unbelievable quantity, and they can also take loss leaders in order to win the race to the bottom.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of companies who will purposely lose money on a line in order to take a large chunk of the market.
Yeah.
That's just not something we can do. We don't have millions invested. We don't have the scale. We just can't beat those people on price. And the other thing to think is that we're not really competing against them. So when we start off, our first product is an Earl Grey and cucumber gin. And so a lot of people think that we're competing with Hendrick's, which is another cucumbery gin. But we're not really. We're double the price of Hendrick's. We're artisan. We're a totally different marketplace.
Yeah, we're small batch.
We're small batch, yes. We can't possibly compete with price, and we shouldn't really try. So that's true for the ones like those big brands, and it's also true for the kind of artisan but the first wave who are now really big. So there's a bunch of other gin brands who are going in at the sort of £30 price range, the £35 price range. And one of the problems we have when starting is there's a few other smaller gin producers around, and our pricing that we were selling to bars and restaurants and stuff was higher than theirs.
Yes.
So they would say to us, well, I'll just go to this person because I'll do it for cheaper.
Yeah, but they're another local gin.
And they're another local gin. And one of the reasons they were cheaper, we found out, is that they purposely found out what our pricing was and lowered it a little bit.
Yep.
So if we started competing with that, we just hack away at each other's margins, reduce the price, and end up none of us making any money. And they can do it. They've got more investment for us, so they can take a loss for longer. They've got bigger capacity than us, so they can afford to do it. And they've been around longer than us. But we're not trying to compete with them. We're not trying to compete on price with them. We're trying to compete on quality.
Yes.
And when they're going in cheaper than us and dropping their prices, and we're holding firm at a higher price, selling, well, if you want it, that's the price, that indicates a quality.
Yeah, and it supports our really strong branding as well, which is really important to us.
Yeah. And it's something that we has paid dividends, because there's a lot of these places who will only pay that reduced price for our competitor, but will still pay us the higher price.
Yes.
And it is hard to go in with a price that's higher than the other people in your industry. So for us, with the other artisan gins, but we had to do it, and we still got sales, and it meant that we were able to build a viable business that earned money from day one, rather than something that didn't really work. And that's because you'll probably want a bigger margin than you think. And this is a good case of that. Whereas we could have reduced our prices, but then we would have only been making £1 or £2 a bottle.
Yeah.
And how many bottles of gin do you need to sell in order to make £1 or £2 a bottle?
And the other thing is, you can't reduce your price for one customer because they all talk. So it would mean you'd have to reduce your price across the board. I think, to put it into numbers with gin, for the hundreds of bars and restaurants we've approached, off the top of my head, there are only 2 that have not taken our gin on price. Everyone else has taken it. So it's a very small percentage of business loss we've had over the higher price, just at price alone.
And it's worth bearing in mind, when we're selling gin, we're literally going door to door to talk to the bar owners. And if we were only making £1 a bottle and they were only buying 6 bottles, we would not be able to justify that.
No.
So even though we are losing out on a few customers who might have bought it if it was cheaper, we wouldn't be doing that because we wouldn't get those customers at all, because it wouldn't be worth us going door to door, and it wouldn't be worth us paying sales representatives to go do that. Next up will be, it's more expensive than you think. That's definitely true about gin. When we first did our back of the napkin margins and worked out how much we were going to make, we missed out a bunch of things.
Yep.
We didn't appreciate that we'd mess up the box sizes when we bought our first boxes and have to throw away the 500 boxes. We didn't appreciate how many breakages we'd get on deliveries.
Yeah.
We didn't appreciate... there was something stupid. It was VAT. We didn't realise you paid VAT on top of alcohol duty.
Yes.
Which cost us an extra £2 a bottle.
Yeah, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That we have to do that.
Tax on tax, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just turned out to be more expensive. Same with the sales. We have to pay for advertising. We have to pay for representatives to go in. We need to give away a lot of free gin, a lot of free samples.
To get the sales.
Kind of expenses. Because we're not that experienced in this type of business, we weren't really able to predict properly. And then finally, for the gin, is that it's easier to reduce your price than to increase it. So this is an area where we kind of messed up a bit.
Yeah.
We, with Pipe House Gin, we went in at the top end of what the artisan market was currently charging.
Yes.
Which turned out to be lower than we should have done.
Yes.
We should have just been...
confident enough.
Bolshy and confident enough and just charged more than everyone else.
Yes.
Because what then happened is, 6 months in, we had to go around and up our prices. And when we have lots of regular customers, that is a really difficult conversation that had to be had with each one in particular, telling them to raise the price. And since raising the price, it hasn't been any more difficult to get new customers than it was before, when it was £2 a bottle cheaper. But we shot ourselves in the foot by going in at a price we thought was right. You should have just gone in higher. This is something else we did we got correct with table tennis. So when I first started my table tennis business, there was one other competitor who was selling a similar product, and in fact they were the ones who kind of inspired us to start, because they were selling this great product and they were selling it dirt cheaply. They were selling it for about £12 a bat. We thought that is ludicrously cheap. It's the only thing on the market. We think we can do it better. And so when we started up, we initially priced our bat at £25. So over double what they were charging.
Bolshy.
And outsold them pretty quickly. Because people don't expect anything good from £11 bats. They were, by having the price so cheap, they were damaging the reputation.
Yeah. It almost sounds like it's a disposable thing. Like you use it once and throw it away at that price.
And then after about 3 months of selling, we upped our price to £30 and found that actually sales didn't really get affected at all. If anything, they went up slightly. We found like the sweet spot between how much we were making per bat and sales and margin that was perfect for us.
So it's interesting. I didn't realise that happened with the bats. So it's interesting how there's two businesses that you've run that have had to up the price.
Yeah. Well, with the bats, we upped it not because we weren't making enough and we had to do it, but because we thought we could up our prices. We were experimenting with new market. And what we did is we did a bit of, because it was mainly sold on Amazon and online, we could do effectively A/B testing where we offered a few different prices.
That's interesting.
And then we could analyse how the sales were affected from each one.
Wow.
And bear in mind, if you go from 25 quid to 30 quid, that extra £5 is almost all profit.
Yeah.
Because all your margins are already taken care of. So any extra you can put up is great and is extra profit.
Wow. What a nice place to be.
Which is something you can do on an online business like that.
Yes.
But you can't do when you're going door to door selling bars locally where they all talk. You can't give each of them a different price and A/B test that.
Or selling at a market stall.
Or selling at a market stall. You can't give one customer one price and the next customer another price. So it's something which, you got to use your common sense about it. But generally, start as high as possible and then pull your prices back if you need to. And then the final bit I want to talk about was the coffee shop or your supper clubs. So I started a coffee shop in London. It's called the Wren Coffee. And next door to it was Pret a Manger, who sell filter coffees for £1 a cup.
How do you compete with that?
How on earth do you compete with what must be a loss-leading thing? Obviously, we can't win the race to the bottom with them. And in fact, we were then comparing ourselves to the other artisan coffee shops, places like Taylor Street Barista and Caravan and Workshop. And what we should have done, but we didn't do, was we should have priced ourselves above them.
Yes.
Because we were in a better location. We were more... People aren't as price sensitive as you think they are. We were the only artisan coffee shop within a walking distance of where we are, so we had the market cornered. But we didn't. We just went in at the same price as what they were charging. Again, there's another one. It's easier to reduce price and increase it. And 6 months later, we upped our prices. And that was really difficult. And we actually lost quite a lot of customers because of it.
Wow.
And these customers wouldn't have batted an eyelid if it had been
the high price to start with.
The high price to start with. It was the upping the price they didn't like.
Yeah.
That they came in one day and it was one price, and came the next day and they've got the exact change, and then they can't afford it.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. So you can't win the race to the bottom. It's easier to reduce price than to increase it. Price indicates quality. If I'm a coffee snob, which I am.
Yes.
But I might not know that much about coffee, which I definitely was in that situation at one point where as long as it looked good, I thought it was good.
Yeah, you like the look of the branding.
Yeah. Then I'm going to be looking at that £3 flat white and thinking, oh, that's going to be better quality than the £1 filter coffee sold next door. Coffee's a weird one though, because you can go to Starbucks and pay £5 for a coffee that is much worse than what you get in an artisan coffee shop.
Yeah.
So still, I think the artisan coffee market has priced itself quite badly.
Yes.
And we've been to countries where the coffee's more expensive and the cost of living is cheaper.
Yes.
So I think in London in particular, coffee's a bit too cheap, and it is going up. And that's another reason why that business never really made any money, because it's very difficult to make a really good quality artisan product for £2.50 and make any money out of it, because you'll want a bigger margin than you think.
Yeah,
we had to turn over. Go on.
Because it's not just the cost of the cup and the coffee beans and the milk and the water, it's everything else around it.
Everything else around it. It's all the staff. And you've got
building.
to sell a lot of coffees in order to make any money. So I think we had to turn over something like £1,400 a day in order to break even.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Think how many £2.50 cups of coffee that is. You've got to be churning them out on a conveyor belt in order to...
And have the customers to want to pay for them.
So making £1 a cup just isn't good enough. You've got to have other things. And what we were told before we started, which we didn't listen to, was if you want to make money from a coffee shop, you can't do it from the coffee. If you want to sell good quality coffee, you need to have something else that makes the money, such as food.
Yeah.
That's definitely something where should have gone in higher. Same with the food. Should have gone a bit more expensive. And yeah, you just touched on it there, but everything's more expensive than you think. Coffee shops are a really obvious example of this, where you don't really know what you get yourself into. Like, we didn't know that you have to, by law, pay for pest control. You have to have a pest control contract. And there's only a few companies who offer pest control contracts, and so they've got the market locked down.
Yeah.
That it's a legal requirement. So we have to pay £1,000 a year in order for someone to come round twice a year and just have a look round. Absolutely ridiculous, but something we didn't know, which is an extra however many cups of coffee. It's an extra 700 coffees we had to sell in order to cover that. And there were loads of things like that, stuff like the coffee machine breaking down, staff leaving, sick pay, wastage. We printed the wrong times on our cups. Did I tell you this story?
What?
We
Times?
So we ordered something like 100,000 takeaway cups, and on it had open Monday to Friday these times, Saturday and Sunday these times.
You weren't open Saturday and Sunday?
Well, we were when we first started, but about a month in we decided not to open on Saturday, Sunday. But by then we had a 2 years supply of cups.
Oh. What did you do? Throw them away?
I think what we did is we bought stickers and stuck over.
A little wren.
Spent hours sticking over this cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just things like that you just don't expect. But that's not a lesson I've learned, because we had the same problems. I just talked about the boxers from Pinehouse Gin. There's always unexpected expenses. So there we go. That's the end of this podcast. Don't compete on price. Doesn't matter what business you're doing. You should probably go in more expensive than you think you should. I once heard someone say you need to feel uncomfortable with how much you're charging. If you don't feel a bit uncomfortable, you should probably charge a bit more. And I think that's some good advice. So on that, I'm going to say goodbye. Emma, do you have anything you'd like to say?
What about my sub club?
Oh, supper club. Oh yeah. Yeah, let's talk about your supper club. I kind of threw that in with a coffee shop. But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Is that when you started, so you charge £30 a head for people to come round and have dinner with us, basically. So you have 8 people plus us 2. Each person pays £30 and they get a 3-course meal out of it. One of my best friends, my best man in fact, his reaction was, why would anyone pay £30 to come to your house when they can go to Pizza Express and pay £15?
Yeah.
Like, we're not competing with Pizza Express. It's a different, and we can't compete on price with that. We can't compete with a supply chain, economies of scale restaurant who are turning over hundreds of tables a day and charge the same. It's a totally different thing, and we got to charge accordingly. And likewise, you charge £30 a head, and then about a year in, you were saying that, you should probably put it up to about £50 a head. £40 a head.
And I never had the confidence.
And you never had the confidence to do it because you'd already put in that initial thought into everyone's head that this is how much it costs. Whereas if you'd started at 40, it probably wouldn't. You're only selling 8 tickets. Probably would have been the same difficulty selling those tickets.
But part of it was confidence for me. I didn't want to go in at 40 because that sounded too high.
Yeah.
Because I'd done some research of other supper clubs across the country, not necessarily the local ones, that I thought looked really good. And 30 quid was slightly cheaper than them.
Yeah.
And that was me being stupid.
And that's a good throwback to what I just said about going at a point where you feel a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, and also I felt if I did raise it to 40, I felt like I needed to offer something else because a lot of my customers were return. It was about 50% return. So they were going to come back and have a similar meal.
And knowing some of your regulars, there's definitely ones who would not have come back because of the price increase.
Yes.
Just out of the principle of the matter.
Yes, and they would have told me so as well.
Yeah, they would have said it. It's like, no. But they're not price sensitive at all. They would have paid the larger amount to begin with.
Definitely. But it's the principle.
It's the principle of it. Yes, exactly. Same true. Price indicates quality. If you're choosing between supper clubs, you didn't really have any competition. But if you did, if it was saturated with supper clubs, then price indicates quality on that. You want a bigger margin than you think. Bear in mind, when people are doing a supper club, they're thinking, people are only going to be there from 7 to 11 each day. Well, what you don't realise is that you spend the whole day cooking, and then you spend the previous couple of days shopping for ingredients and planning the recipe and following up with people and getting the money and marketing it and everything. So it's more expensive than you think, and you need a bigger margin than you think in order to make it worth your time.
Yeah.
And that's it. All right, well, thanks for reminding me about that. Anything else?
No.
All right, well, we're off to an award ceremony now.
So wish us luck.
If you have any feedback, email us at hello@samprisi.com. Adios.